Hey folks, we're shooting from Pilma in Utah, the summit of 2016. I'm sitting here next to Seth Price, which is a great friend of mine. He's an attorney in Washington, D.C., and also a legal marketer. Seth Price has had awesome success online with his law firm and has recently launched his new venture and an awesome new company called Blu Spark, where he's helping attorneys and small law firms get noticed and get found online. Seth, tell us a little bit about your project. Actually, Seth, you were telling us and you were teaching everyone about the Google 3-pack today.
Well, thank you for having me, Alex. This is awesome to be here. It's great to be at Pilma. What we did is took the success of our in-house digital team and created Blu Spark Digital. It's a digital agency that has worked with lawyers around the country. And one of the benefits of being a single event local player is that you can take advantage of what Google allows, which is to be found locally. Historically, a player who had the resources could win organically and you couldn't do anything about it. And Google has usurped that by really focusing on finding the best local results for people, both in the organic as well as in the 3-pack. It had been a 7-pack. There are 3 local results. You see them all the time in ABC. It's really important to be there. It's getting more and more competitive. Google has announced and is testing out putting an ad as one of those 3 local results. So it's even more competitive. It may become a 2-pack. Essentially for organic. And what we talked about today were the factors that go into giving yourself the best chance of being in that 3-pack. And it's a combination of traditional SEO, which at its core is content and links, combined with local processes dealing with your NAP, your name, address, and phone number, combined with reviews and a number of other factors. But the idea that unless you take control of your NAP, your local listing, that you're not going to be able to give Google that clear understanding of where you are and who you are. The key that we focus on is not confusing Google. We want to give Google a clear understanding as to who we are and where we are. So your name, your address, and phone number, very basic things, but looking in a room with a couple hundred people in it, we were faced with people who have changed the name of their firm, have changed the address, and or changed their phone numbers. And at each time you do those things, there's a massive amount of cleanup that has to be done behind the scenes because Google sees this history with all these different places, and your competitors, if you're in a competitive market, they're cleaned up, and you need to make sure that you have a consistent name, and if the name is changed, that you remove the other names or suppress them, that the phone number is consistent, and that you're careful not to have other phone numbers as part of that NAP. Tracking number is a whole other conversation, and making sure that for the address itself, even if you have your address, you have the old address is gone, what is the nomenclature? Are you using street? Are you using ST? Are you using suite? Are you using a pound sign? How can you give a clear and consistent, universal, over and over again attempt to show Google this is where we are and there's no confusion? When you do all of that combined with traditional SEO, that's the magic that gets you up there.
Awesome. And we had tons of questions during the conference. Seth had a great presentation, and one of the questions was, what do I do if I have multiple locations? Why don't you tell everyone how they would handle multiple locations with the 3-pack?
Sure. Well, there are two. I think there are two ways that question can go. One is if you have multiple locations, that each one has to be claimed, and that once it's claimed, it needs to be built out. You want to make sure you take advantage of making sure that you have the information in each of these locations that represents a claimed profile, and you're treating it as this is your business. Are your hours there? Are your photos of the office? Are you getting reviews? Making sure that each and every one of those is there, giving a full picture as to what is going on there. Combining that with a link to a location page on your website brings in that organic piece, and the combination of the organic and getting the offices claimed and optimized locally. When those come together, then you have the chance of having your satellite offices or tertiary offices showing just like you have your main office.
Awesome. And then how important are reviews in the 3-pack?
It is an evolving piece. I don't believe the algorithm is set yet. It is clearly a factor for conversion. It is unclear whether this is a magic bullet that will get you shown, but generally, I can tell you that the people that are shown have reviews. And when you look at a market, now it also may be the people who have reviews are taking care of their listing, so it may be self-fulfilling. At one point, Google was claiming that was not a factor. It appears whether it's somewhat of a factor, but I couldn't tell you exactly how much. The answer is regardless. It's super important and is becoming more so. And I would, anybody who vets against that being a factor in the future, I would not agree with.
How difficult is it for a small to medium firm to compete with one of the big players in the market on the three pack? What would you recommend?
What I would recommend is looking to find your niche. For example, if you're in a major market and you have players that are really dominant in the SEO space, that's such a large factor and it's going to be hard. But if there is a suburb or a county that allows you to own local for that area with meaningful population, even though you may not hit the three pack for the main town, if you can own that separate county, that's where I've seen success, particularly some of the big Florida cities with massive players that we've seen people being able to get success with offices, not in the main money name county, but the counties around have huge populations and very often are ignored by the bigger players.
Would they have to have a brick and mortar to compete in that smaller market?
Yes, I mean, very often it's, for a big firm, they may have their main office in downtown and 2 or 3 satellite offices. Having a presence that complies with the Google guidelines that allows you to have that office there is can be huge. Again, if you're a referral practice downtown, you're probably not going to take this advice. But if you're somebody who's trying to maximize, fish where other people aren't fishing. And if you can find a way that geographically to place your office in a place that comports with, or where there's not a plethora of other players, that would probably be for somebody who is did not have a sophisticated SEO presence, would be the only way to compete there.
You keep referencing satellite offices. Another question came up with satellite offices where typically in a building where there's satellite offices, there's additional businesses and offices, and in some cases there might be other attorney offices. What's the importance there as far as suite number or differentiation?
Well, right. And again, I'm using satellite office as a general term. There are people that may have 4 offices that are all with partners and are all used. There are often times where people will have a secondary office where they can see clients. The key is if you are in an office building, whether it's your primary office or a secondary office, if you're in an office building, making sure there's a distinct suite number is key. And that if you're in a building, you see this with realtors a lot, where there's a RE/MAX office and all these people are there. If you can't differentiate from the other people in the office, you're not going to be found. So I think it's very important to include in your lease the fact that you have an independent suite number that differentiates yourself. And that if you don't do that, you really are in jeopardy of not being able to be found. And that is one of the basic things. It doesn't cost you anything, but having a distinct address from the other people in the building, really important.
So a question came up. If you're an attorney in an office building with multiple offices, how do you differentiate?
And right now, with the update from a few weeks ago, it's scary. The answer is go big or get a new home. I mean, if you could either become the top player and get shown, or it appears right now you need a different piece of real estate. And it's sad because there are a lot of buildings across from the courthouse that have the best lawyers in the city are in that building. And you'd like to see the best results, which is what Google is aiming for, to have A, B, and C all be lawyers from that building, because just because Joe Blow down the block has an office there doesn't mean that diversity of choice is good for the user. The user really does want to see any of those 3 people in the building. Right now, for the time being, that doesn't happen. So you either have to get on top or you have to get out.
Yeah, we see it a lot in Fort Lauderdale where all the law firms are around the office.
Which is what you want. That's
right.
Where you'd want somebody to be. It's where there's camaraderie. There's definitely value add. And so the question is, what do you do about it? I think it's too early to tell. We're 2 weeks into the update. Very often Google will make a proclamation and then come back. One was, if you remember, for exact match domains
right.
that took place a number of years back. There was a point where they said, that's bad. And we had some that were, variation on exact match, and they moved down for a few days. And then they said, oh, whoa, we were trying to get rid of people with exact match domains that had no content on it that might be selling AdWords. And so they went back to saying, hey, if you have legitimate content with exact match, then we're going to reward you. It's great content, and you're saying this is what we're about. So I'm hoping that this Possum update somehow recalibrates, that they were trying to eliminate fraud issues, and that hopefully what they're going to do is say, hey, we went too far in this direction and swing back, because I think it's a shame. Most people are not as crazy as I that would actually get up and move and leave a building. But if you're playing the digital game, they've just taken somebody who had a regular place and got rid of it. Unfortunately, fortunately for them, unfortunately for us, that's a way of forcing ad sales. I just don't like it. I'd like to see the best people shown regardless of where they're located.
Yeah, that's fair. Is there a service out there that you would recommend if someone was trying to do it on their own? What services would you recommend for them to at least get their feet wet and get things going? Because I know it's technical.
Right, there's technical. Look, there are a bunch of them from Oz Local EX that are out there. Those are good places to start. If you have staff and they're able, there is nothing better than cleaning up the citations yourself. But these other ones, and I mentioned this during the presentation, if you're paying a suppression service like EX, you're stuck for life there.
Right.
Like you stop
I think
using it.
Double suppression's like $500 for the year.
Right, and it's less with more addresses, etc. But the idea being that it's great, but it's like a drug, and and like just like Uber, we're stuck with it. And now when you see a 4x surge, like your local presence is now controlled by them, and if they disappear or you're not using it, we use it. But I'm just saying that to understand what you're dealing with, and that it's not it is, if you stop paying, it is back.
What are 3 tips you would give everyone in our list right now? What are 3 takeaways that you think would be helpful, something that they should start doing right away?
Well, making sure, we talked about, okay, it's obvious you need to claim your profile. Great, everybody says that. If you have multiple offices, yes, I'm sure your first one is claimed. Have you claimed the other ones? Very basic, just double check it. Looking to see whether or not your old addresses and phone numbers are still out there. Many people have changed partners, changed addresses. Really, having somebody on your staff, you can Google your old address, Google your old phone number. What's out there? If it's out there, you need to do something about it. And then I would say, just being aware of what's going on around you. What are the assets you have? If you have the ability to work with SEO, that's great. If you don't, then you don't have that firepower. Looking at the less competitive markets that we looked at, because that will give you a better shot at success. If you don't have an SEO presence and you're trying to play in a major market, that's probably not going to work for local, but it may allow you, if you're an outlying area, to still have success because there's lack of competition. That's where just having a local presence can get you by.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much.
It's great being here.
Appreciate it. So folks, if it's something that you don't want to do on your own, I highly recommend contacting Seth with Blu Spark. He's there to help you. It's not the easiest thing to do. It's very technical if you're going to go out and do it on your own. I highly recommend contacting him. If you're working with an SEO, make sure you're checking it. You really never know what anyone's doing, and you want to make sure you're getting accountability of everyone's efforts.
And I would say that one of those things, and it's really basic, and you work with a great SEO as well, have a set of reports run. It's transparent. If you get reports of links and pages and local, there are tools that very quickly, and that a good SEO will run for you for free to say, hey, this is what's actually there. You can't hide as an SEO anymore. You either build links or you don't. You either create content or you don't. You either have NAP listings or you don't. And if you can actually quantify that, you could begin to actually fix the problem.
Great. And you mentioned something great there. You mentioned content, and maybe to digress off of the NAP and the 3-pack real quick, how important has content been to the success of your firm?
I mean, it's huge, and I know you were a pioneer in the legal content space, and we've emulated it and followed your success. Look, Google has made it very clear, and even in recent weeks, content and links, that moves the dial.
That's it.
And given that getting links is so challenging and so difficult, that the one thing that you can control, whether the New York Times gives you a link, I can't control. We can be quoted in there and they'd still tell us,
Right.
piss off, we're not going to give you a link. But content is something that you control 100% yourself. You don't need a favor from somebody else. And because of that, I find it incredibly empowering, because whether it's a person doing it themselves, because lawyers who are good writers don't even need to pay somebody, or if you have the money and you don't have the time, bringing on somebody like we do web content or others to create that content. But the ability to have high quality content merged with the links, that's digital marketing.
It is.
And if you can do that, it's how you do it that's important. But that is the roadmap.
Yep, you heard it here. I mean, having a content and link building strategy, a total digital marketing strategy with the right agency, or if you have someone in house, is totally important. But again, it goes back to having that quality content and those links. I mean, content alone can do it, but you really can't push a dial without those links. It's going to take forever with content alone. But if you're going to do anything, like Seth said, you have the opportunity to do content. It is something you can control if you can't afford to work with an agency.
Great.
All right, Seth. Thanks so much, man.